This month, Education Cabinet Secretary Emmanuel Manyasa admitted that close to 70% of children in Nairobi County attend private institutions. And just last week, the CS also decried the high cost of private schools and asked the owners to lower the cost of education. So as a country, what is the state of cost of education in the country? And today on Biashara Tuesday, we are joined by Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa. He is Executive Director of Usawa Agenda for this particular conversation. And just to tell you who Dr. is, in case you're seeing him for the first time, going to be seeing him for the first time, he holds a PhD in Development Economics, holds a certificate in Grants Management from Strathmore University, a CPS Section 3 and certificate in Evaluating Social Programs from JPL, African Innovations for Poverty Actions. He'll be telling us all about that. Taught Development Economics, so he really understands as much as the whole cost of education and how it should really be priced. And he has also led the Uwezo program, basically conducting the citizen-led assessment of learning in Kenya. Quite the years and quite the hats in your plate. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, as Usawa, what does Usawa really do when it comes to matters education?
Usawa Agenda does research with a focus to promoting education justice in Kenya. We believe that our education systems, the way they are set up, are unjust inherently because they do not accord every child the opportunity that a wise parent would desire for their own child. And because of that, we think that we can change the way we offer education. We can restructure the systems of education and make them more just, make them guarantee that what a child emerges with from school reflects only their ability and their effort. At the moment, what one emerges with from school reflects very many other encumbrances that have nothing to do with the child's ability or the child's effort in school.
Right. And the vision for Usawa Agenda is, and I quote, a world where every child benefits from quality education. And you've told us, I mean, as much as inherent problems that have been there ever since, prehistoric and post-independence problems that have been there. But for this vision, do you think you'll obviously believe in the vision, but then do you think Kenyans are also true to this particular vision, a world where every child benefits from quality education?
Kenya is signatory to the Global 2030 Agenda. Kenya is signatory to the African 2063 Agenda. Kenya has its own Vision 2030, and Kenya has put in our constitution the fact that basic education is a right for every child. So Kenya has committed in word, in black and white, that they are going to offer every child an equal opportunity through education. Now, in terms of practice, there are gaps, and those gaps are what we are seeking to fill so that we live up to the word that we have committed ourselves to.
Right. Dr. So even as you continue, let me take you through some data. First off, by a World Remit, a digital firm that says, so this was last year's report, showing that a Kenyan parent spends about 68,000 Kenyan shillings, 701 annually on a school-going child. As someone who understands matters economics, we'll be diving into more data, but then we can just take a look at that, first of all. So this reflects on just a school-going child, either be it private or public institution. But 68,000 for just a regular parent. What do you make of that?
First, we have to admit that education has never been cheap, ever since, and it cannot be cheap. So the problem is not the amount of money being spent. The problem is actually what we are getting in return for the amount of money that is being spent. Because on average, from the data that we have, the Kenyan parents foot 38% of the cost of education.
38%?
38%.
Okay.
And the government foots 54% of the cost of education. And then we have other actors, donors, footing the remaining about 8%
Right.
of the cost of our education. So for me, the key issue is when parents are putting all these resources in education, how accountable is the education system to guarantee that they are getting value for the sacrifice that they're making to invest in their children?
So does it mean, and sorry to cut you, does it mean the higher a parent pays and knows that I'm going to be paying higher, they also expect a higher value? Because, I mean, as just starting earlier this month, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machugu was saying that 70% of parents in Nairobi alone are taking their children to private institutions. So does this mean this 70% are expecting that I'm going to be paying, let's say, 50,000 or even higher? Does that mean they're also expecting a higher value?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because we have parents paying 1 million shillings for children in primary schools in this country.
Okay.
And that is out of choice. And for those parents, they are actually expecting much higher value. The 70% that Waziri is talking about in Nairobi are people taking their children to low-cost private schools because they have no option. The government has not put up public schools in our informal settlements. So those parents have no option. It's no choice for them to take children in private schools, which actually sometimes amazes me that the government does not give those children in the low-cost private schools capitation. Mm-hmm. And yet they are the children of the poorest of the poor, especially in our urban centers. So I feel that we might convolute issues when we just look at the fact that the parent is paying. There are those paying out of choice, and they are paying as high as 1 million and more per year. And there are those paying 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 because they have no choice. They must pay because their children have no access to any other kind of school. So they have to go to private school.
Right. And actually on the same train of thought, something that had skipped my mind, taking a look at, so this is the cartoon on yesterday's paper of Daily Nation. And I would like your honest analysis on this cartoon, showing, you could actually tell us what you see on this cartoon.
Yeah. This is a debate we've had for a long time since the government implemented the free primary education in 2003. The objective at that time was good. We had a lot of children who had dropped out of school because of lack of fees, and the government promised it will offer free primary education. There was a lot of goodwill from the international community, and we got a lot of support, especially from World Bank and others, to get children into school. Once we had gotten children into school, we needed to go another step further and now guarantee that they are not just attending school and growing up in school, but they are actually learning while in school. We did not go to that level. So a lot of public schools became growth centers where children just went to grow. And so our assessments were showing children who are leaving class 8 and they cannot read a class 2 story. So they were just growing up. And that is how, if you look at the history of private schools in Kenya, until 2003, we didn't have very many private schools in Kenya, but private schools expanded when free primary education was introduced. Instead of anyone else expecting that they will shrink because parents will take their children to the public school, which was now free, they expanded. Why? Because there was no learning happening in the public primary schools, and parents were forced to look for alternatives. And that is how the private school started to expand, especially at the primary level. So it is a conversation we need to have. We haven't addressed the issues that made public primary schools become growth centers where children don't learn. And we need to make sure that we enable those children to learn, because it is actually an unjust act to force a child into a school and keep them there when they are actually not learning. It's unfair to that child.
Right, and as you can see, I think someone, probably a teacher, someone just telling this child, out, go get school fees. And this is probably something that we expect to see even when schools reopen for the second term. But then there's a free education, you've touched on it. I'd like for your, what do you think about the whole philosophy of free education when it started, the whole ideology when it was first?
First, I think it was, the word free education is a misnomer because there is nothing that has value that is free. In this case, actually, what we have is publicly funded primary education, so that the taxpayer pays for primary education. It's not offered free, but the taxpayer pays. So the philosophy was good. The whole idea is good. It's actually part of us living our constitutional promise to children, that we will get all of them to benefit from free and compulsory basic education. It's a constitutional promise to every child, those living now and those who will be born in future, unless we amend the Constitution. So because we have made this promise, we had to bring in resources from the taxpayers to pay. And that idea was good, because every child in this country deserves to have their talents developed and harnessed for the development of the country. So the problem has been that we have thought that there are people or children who deserve low quality and those who deserve high quality. And we have said, let those who want high quality pay, and those who cannot pay get low quality. And I think that is a problem. We need to be focusing on making the school system to deliver the same quality of education to every child. Whether they attend public or private school, there should be no difference. So the quality of education access should be the same.
So probably the initial structure of how the free education, as you're saying, is an anomaly, was probably the issue. How it was first concepted, the initial structure of it.
No, there was no problem. We just lost focus at some point.
Okay.
It was okay to start it the way it was started, to say, we have all these many children outside of school, let's get all of them in school. Once we got them into school, it was clear that, one, the teachers were being overwhelmed, so we needed to focus on getting enough teachers into those schools. We didn't do that. To this day, our schools still face huge teacher shortages. We needed to focus on, can we make the learning facilities in the schools be conducive? We still have schools where toilets are a problem.
Oh, yes.
And that in itself makes learning difficult. We needed then to go beyond that and say, can we provide school feeding? I went to school during Nyayo days and we had milk in school. And much as people may not really think that was something, it was something. For children who are commuting from long distances and couldn't go home for lunch, that packet of milk was very useful. So we need to think. By now, actually, we should have sorted out issues of teachers, sorted out infrastructure in schools. We should be grappling with, can we provide children a meal in school?
Right.
Per day.
Right. As we continue just taking a look at the data, so we're taking a look at the one for World Remit. I want us to also take a look at one, a survey done and a report released by the Florida State University back in 2017, showing that private schools cost parents, that was about $80 by that time. So that's about 11,376 shillings, thereabout. And for a public school is about 6,541. So that's in 2017. And when you take a look at now over the years, this has definitely changed. But I want to get into even the private schools, which when we started, you're saying it's twofold. Either parent decides they don't really have a choice because around their locality there's no public school, or they actually just decide, I'm going to take my child to school. And over the years we've had quite the number of private schools really mushrooming. Do you think at some point these private schools saw the gap that, actually, these parents don't really have a choice. So it turned out to be a money minting scheme and a platform for them.
Whoever does any business without the motivation of profit, if anybody goes into business, they are motivated by profit.
Do you think? Do you think this was clouded by the fact that the real value for education?
I don't think so, because even those who run private hospitals, much as they are saving lives, they are in making money for themselves. So that is the bottom line. Anyone who is in business is motivated by profit. So the challenge for those who set up private schools, especially in our informal settlements, it's not for them. The challenge is for government to put up public schools and fund them and give parents a choice whether to now go to private school or to be in public school. For those in those areas, okay, parents have no choice. When you have no choice, you are a captive customer.
Zodaktari, last week on Sunday, Education Cabinet Secretary was urging private school owners to lower the cost of education and just tell them, just telling them and decrying the high cost of tuition fees that is in these private schools. I mean, this is coming even from the government. What is your sentiment?
That is as useful as Transport Minister telling matatu operators to lower the fare. It's just a story, to achieve whatever he thought he wanted to achieve. For some private schools, those really high cost, the reason they operate is because they are high cost. I am a student of economics. I know that certain commodities are sold because the buyers want exclusive status.
So does this mean
so if you tell someone who runs a very high cost school, a school which parents have chosen because it is high cost and it will be exclusive, to lower the fees, you are telling that fellow to close the school, because the parents who go there want exclusion. That's why a parent will pay 1 million shillings for a child in primary school, because they want that child to be in an exclusive school where they won't interact with everyone else. It is a clear choice. If that school is made affordable to everyone else, that parent will pull their child out of that school. They wanted exclusion. So private schools are run on the basis of what do their customers want. And those customers are the parents. If he was talking about the low-cost private schools, those low-cost private schools are not minting money. Some of them are barely surviving. That is how, when COVID came, many of them closed.
They closed, but generally,
because they are barely surviving. Okay. So if he was thinking about those ones, he's misguided. If he's thinking about the high-cost ones, they exist because they are high-cost. So his statement was neither here nor there.
But generally, as you say, your analysis of it sort of, remarks that would be similar to a toothless dog. But so what powers does the government have when it comes to, now generally, be it the lower cadre private schools as well as even the upper cadre schools? To what extent does the government have a hand in when it comes to even the regulation of, let's say, the fees? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about having an equal...
Government should focus on running public schools well, establish them everywhere, and give parents a choice. So that if a parent chooses to go to a private school, they have a reason why they have gone there, and it is not the business of government to deal in customer-client relations.
Okay.
Government has no capacity to engage in that, and it shouldn't try to engage in that. Focus should be establish public schools where they are lacking and run them well, and let parents make a choice on whether they want to go to private or to public.
On the bit of running them well, we have now over the years the introduction of the competency-based curriculum, the CBC, really just trying to have an equal playground on that. First of all, before we actually even dive into more on that, what is your view so far on the introduction of CBC? Because so far, when you take a look at even most of this data, it really showed the 844 kind of system and how the cost of education for this 844 was. But then now we're having another system here, the CBC system, which parents are really crying, hey, CBC is very costly. Your child tells you, lazima ununue sijui vitu kama ngapi, all that. What's your view on CBC?
First, the introduction of CBC was necessary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because 844 was a wasteful system.
Okay.
Yeah. People have romanticized it, and I have asked myself, why don't they tell us? For the last 7 or so years, 65% plus of all candidates who sit KCSE in Kenya score D+ and below. Why don't they tell us what happens to those people? If you haven't told us what happens to the D+ and D- and D planes and E's that this country has produced in hundreds of thousands. If you don't tell me what happens to them, you don't know what you're talking about when you say let's keep 844. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is, it was necessary to change the curriculum. Have we implemented it well when we changed? No. We skipped important stages in curriculum reform process, and we have caused confusion in the implementation process. So some of the things parents are being asked to do are based on misunderstanding of the curriculum by the teachers, because teachers were never prepared for implementation. They were never trained properly for implementation. So
in your view, was it rushed? Did we rush the implementation of CBC before?
Of course, yes. We were not ready. We didn't follow all the stages expected to follow when reforming a curriculum. Yeah.
And right now, when parents are, as you're saying, really crying the fact that they don't really understand what is going on when it comes to the whole CBC. Because we're taking a look at the overview and analysis of how a parent would choose to take their child to, let's say, now for the 844, but then now here's a CBC kind of system. Has CBC lined the playground for both public and private?
No. Because right now the children in junior school, in private schools are learning, those in public schools are just growing up. Mm-hmm. Because of haphazard implementation, we have not leveraged CBC to level the playing ground for children. That is what it sought to achieve. It can still achieve that, but we need to take a lot of serious action in redressing the gaps in our public school system in terms of implementing CBC.
And I think one of the biggest questions and statements that Kenyans would really say is, now education is for the rich. Because if let's say a family is planning to have children, one of the biggest factors they're taking a look at is school fees. I'd need to have, let's say, 2 children because I'm going to be paying school fees for these 2 children on the same. Countries in Europe and all that, it is something that parents don't really have to worry about. Will we ever reach to this level? What do we need to do so that even for a parent who knows that I'm planning to have 4 children in this household, I don't really need to worry about how much school fees I'm going to be paying for these 4 children?
It is not also true that in developed countries, people don't have to worry about school fees. If you go to UK, if you go to the US, young university students worry a lot about student loan. Mm-hmm. You get the loan, but you repay it for very many years after you get employed. So it's not true that people don't worry about school fees outside of Kenya. People worry about school fees.
Are there things that European nations and even some other African countries have done that Kenya can really pick up from?
Among them is...
You probably tell me, because I mean, as a researcher yourself...
I am just trying to clarify to you that the notion, which sometimes have been propagated, that outside of Kenya, school fees is not a problem, it's not true. School fees is paid all over the world, and in many places, they pay more than we do. But that is not to say that we don't have a right as Kenyans, because we have put in our constitution, enshrined in our constitution, the right to education for every child, that we don't have a duty to make sure every child has access. My view has been that government is the chief guarantor of this right. But government doesn't have to do everything. Government needs to provide proper guideline and say, it is going to cost this child this much to be in school and to get the right quality of education that we want for the child. The government is able to contribute this much towards that. And then be able to highlight clearly what the gaps are and invite other actors to fill up those gaps. Those actors could be parents. Those actors will be just well-wishers in community who know that this child is brilliant, they are able to excel in school, government is supporting them to this extent, but they have this gap that needs to be filled and well-wishers can fill. Those people will be development partners who support education. We have a lot of development partners supporting education to a very significant level in this country. Those will be local philanthropies who are generating resources and supporting. It will be private individuals. I know so many people in this city who are paying school fees for many children who are not their own. Some of them paying fees for children they don't even know, but they know about. Yeah. So I think that the biggest failure on the part of government is pretending that it can do everything in education when it can't, and refusing to own up where the gaps exist, highlight those gaps, and invite other actors to be able to join it in filling those gaps.
And Dr. even the whole spirit of the government, the national government, really, as you're putting it, wanting to do every single thing. Right now, your view on the devolved system of education, because even for counties would have the control of the ECD centers. Schools would really have to depend on the national government. Last year, the president's budget had, for education itself, had the highest allocation of it. But then when it trickles down, parents don't really feel where all this huge amounts of budget for education really went. You'd have, we've had parents really lining out to take the bursaries, the CDF bursaries, and they're asking, pesa school fees iko wapi?
I'm not so sure that I get your question properly, but let me try to answer it the way I understood it.
My question is your view on the devolved functions of education and the devolved education as it is. How counties are really taking up education?
There are two things that are devolved. We have ECD and we have TVET that are devolved. So in the ECD, county governments hire the ECD teachers and they manage ECD centers. And my own view has been that all the teachers in basic education sector should be hired by the Teacher Service Commission for standardization. I don't think counties should be hiring ECD teachers. That's why if you go across the country, you find very diverse salary scales for ECD teachers. Instead of having a uniform salary scale, you find different calibers of ECD teachers in different counties. I think that is not a good thing. I think that all teachers should have been, the hiring of all teachers should have been left with the TSC, and then counties manage infrastructure and issues like school feeding, which are necessary for children in that age bracket. We have also devolved TVETs, and counties are on diverse scales in terms of how they have performed in managing the TVETs. Some have done very well, better than maybe the national government will do. Some have done worse than the national government will do. So because they are independent governments. They have also produced very different results in terms of what they have done.
Right. You're really pushing even for the government to have more public schools within a locality. We're taking a look at in most areas, you'd find in different slums, for example, Mukuru Njenga and such like areas around Nairobi, for example, there'd probably be like, let's say 10 private schools around one area and only one public school, which is probably quite far. This, even as the government is really pushing for 100% transition. We've seen the Education Cabinet Secretary really pushing for this 100% transition from those who do the Class 8, which was the last cohort, getting into Form 1. Just having as many of them getting into now the Form 1 slot. But then how properly can the government even have more public schools to really cater for this cost of education?
First, the requirement for more public schools is not a generic one. There are places where we have more public schools than we need.
Yeah.
So some of them are totally underutilized with small numbers of children. But provision of education is a public service. And public services are provided to people, not spaces. So if you have an area, an informal settlement that has hundreds of thousands of people settled there, it follows that they require more schools for you to be able to provide education to all the children there. Services follow people. We need schools that are commensurate to the population densities of the areas that we are talking about. Yeah, and so for me, that is just supposed to be the natural thing, because 100% transition is not just an agenda of the ministry. It's a commitment in the Constitution. Basic education is a right to every child,
yeah.
And basic education is defined as ECD up to secondary school. So naturally, we have to have the 100% transition, because before children have finished high school, they have not completed basic education, which is supposed to be mandatory.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's also focus on, for the now people living with disabilities, as Usawa agenda, the kind of research that you're doing, how is the map out of the kind of schools catered for children living with children with disabilities?
The policy of government for the last few years has been to increase the number of integrated schools, which is a policy we support, that we get children with disabilities in the same schools as children without disabilities. For the reason that we should not continue creating special schools for children with disabilities, because there are no special societies where they're going to live after special school.
Okay.
They need to be in school with their differently abled children, so that they can be able to understand each other and be able to live in harmony and in support of each other. That effort has taken a long time to realize, because there are very few teachers in the normal schools that have been trained on special needs education. So the process is slow, but the process is supposed to happen, is desirable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this start from a particular age, or until let's say this learner?
The integration is from primary. We are supposed to integrate children with special needs with children without special needs in the same schools. In some cases, there has been special units set up in these regular schools, for the reason that maybe the children have certain levels of disability that cannot allow them to sit in an integrated class.
Yeah.
And so there will be a special unit, but within an integrated school, and which I still support. I think it's a good idea. We still have a lot of special schools because it has been slow, first of all, for the society itself to accept. Remember, we are coming from a background where there was stigmatization of children with disabilities. And so some parents of children with disabilities have themselves not been keen on taking their children to integrated schools because of fear that their children will be stigmatized. But I think that is a process we have to allow to continue. We have to continue to educate the adults and the children in our communities that having another child with a disability is not, disability is not inability and does not make someone less human in any way. And that education needs to continue so that in the long run, we have most of our schools being integrated and all our learners learning together, except for those who may have very severe disabilities and who require to be in special units within integrated schools.
Under the eyes of matters cost, when you take a look at now for this integration, will it alter, do you think it will alter how, let's say, one will be required to pay school fees? Do you think some of this would be a factor?
I don't understand what you mean by alter the cost or alter the process of paying fees.
Yes, I mean, let's say the whole integration and you having learners who are required to use Braille, learners who are required to use specific modes of learning in the same integrated school.
Even now, government is paying different capitation amounts for children with disabilities in integrated school. All the head teacher needs to do is to file returns on how many children with disabilities are in the school and they receive a different amount of capitation. The amount they receive is slightly higher than what the other children receive, but it's far, far inadequate. And so for me, the idea is how do we fund children with disabilities adequately to make sure that they are able to get the right assistive devices, they are able to get the right technology to use. Braille is a good technology, but it's outmoded.
Yeah.
We have better technologies now
Yeah.
for children with visual impairment. And I think that should be the discussion. How do we make sure that we can compute the actual cost that is needed and provide that funding to schools so that they can support children with disabilities adequately?
Right. You're talking about the capitation of the funds now to the schools, and we've had this in news outlets, the fact that the delay of the disbursement of this capitation. And I mean, this learner is really expecting and just waiting for this capitation. In your analysis, how much of a danger can this really affect when it comes to the delayed disbursement from the national government?
Of course, delayed disbursement hurts schools. It is the reason you see these cartoons, you see children still being sent home despite on paper education being free at that level, because the school head faces a practical problem. They have to run the school. They have to pay for water, they have to pay for electricity, they have to pay suppliers of various commodities to the school. And when government has delayed to send money, the principal has to turn to the parents and tell them, give us money to fund the operations of the school, because the money that was promised by government is not coming. And if it hasn't come, suppliers will not want to listen. And they still have to be paid for services provided. A lot of schools have teachers employed on the board of management terms. They have to be paid, those teachers. And so, yeah, that is how you see school fees being charged, and that is how you see parents, children being sent away from school for school fees.
Right. Before I get your final thoughts, the Uwezo program, and I mean, you really led the Uwezo program, is taking a look at how the state of the education in the country. Could you tell us how the state of education is and the cost of education is, and what you really learned, and the kind of gaps that we really need to, and what parents and even educators really need to know?
We stopped running Uwezo 4 years ago, but we now run Usawa Agenda, which was formerly Uwezo.
Yeah.
And based on the surveys that we've done between 2020 and now, several things. One, we have challenges with the number of teachers in our schools. A lot of our schools have inadequate teachers. A lot of those schools have board of management teachers. And board of management teachers present two problems to the school. One, they present a demand on the budget that is not covered by government capitation, and so the school principal and the board chair must talk to parents to pay. But also having board of management teachers actually presents three problems. The first one is the financial demand. The second one is the fact that they are less motivated than the other teachers because they are paid less, and yet they are as qualified as the other teachers. The third problem is that they are always moving. As a head, you hire 5 board of management teachers now. In 2 months, TSC advertises to hire. They all apply. They all get hired in other schools. You have to start looking for new board of management teachers. Before you finish orienting them, they are recruited elsewhere. So that turnover makes curriculum delivery a big challenge for schools that are having to depend on these board of management teachers.
Right.
So that is one problem. The second problem is, of course, the delayed sending of capitation, which has gotten many schools into debts. Some schools cannot maintain a certain minimum standard of sanitation in the schools. We just finished releasing the report of our survey last week, and you will see that there are schools which we just rated as dirty when we went around collecting data, because they are unable. If a school is going to miss water a few days in a week, they are actually not able to keep their toilets clean. They have fewer toilets than they need, as per the number of learners. And many learners are using these toilets without sufficient amounts of water to keep those toilets clean. So they are unable to maintain certain minimum sanitation standards, which is a problem. We have schools that are also just poorly run. So you have a board of management chair who is interested in being an entrepreneur and supplying to the school. You have a head teacher who is himself or herself busy trying to be the supplier in the school.
And the government had warned her about this.
Government always warns. but they know that these things are happening. And when these things happen, the school is shortchanged of money. They don't get value for whatever deliveries that are made by these school managers who are now doing business with the schools. That is a big challenge, and it's out there. I think they know. But I think that the biggest challenge is that we have refused to allow parents to play a role in school.
All right.
The Basic Education Act provides for establishment of a National Parents Association that goes up to the school level. We have a National Parents Association that exists in Nairobi. They have been given an office by the ministry. They have not been funded to operate, and they have been denied the right to collect some minimum fees from parents. All membership organizations are run and funded by members. The teachers' unions receive dues from teachers. Head teachers' associations receive dues from head teachers that enable them to run. How is the Parents Association supposed to run? Government has given them an office. Without money to run even that office, leave alone to run branches across the country that are supposed to be collecting the views of parents and supporting them to respond and to ensure their effective participation in the school system. That's a big challenge. I think that the government has undermined the Parents Association, and that's a big problem. It needs to be resolved. The Parents Association can be allowed to collect 10 shillings from a parent annually. 10 shillings per year. I don't think there's a parent in this country with a child in school who is too poor to pay 10 shillings in 1 year to support the Parents Association.
And real quick, before I take the viewer to Kisii County to link up with Kombo Alfayo, for this Parents Association, how far do their powers go when it comes to even deciding and even a whole dialogue with the school owners when it comes to the fees that is needed, the tuition fees? How far do their powers go?
They are recognized by law and are required to support the schools on resource mobilization and support schools on issues of discipline. I think that mandate is limited. It needs to be broader than that. But at least they should first of all be given space to discharge the mandate that has been given to them by the law. And then they can talk about whether that mandate needs to be expanded. I think the mandate needs to be expanded.
Right.
Yeah.
Before I get your last thoughts, allow me to take the viewer to Kisii County, where Alfayo Kombo is, and just talking about matters banana farming, as we do every single Tuesday, matters innovation. Alfayo Kombo, very good morning to you. What do you probably have for us? Right. Before now, we'll be crossing over to him. Give us your final thoughts as we now probably take a short break.
I think that we have allowed what were small issues in the education sector to fester and become crisis. Junior school issue is now a crisis. We need to sort that out. We need to sort out the fact that the courts have ruled that intern teachers is an illegal creation, and we need therefore to quickly figure out a solution to that. It's urgent. I think that we need to settle quickly the issue of what is a junior school. It is not going to do well as currently set up in a primary school. It needs to be settled in a secondary school. And these teachers who have been hired as intern teachers transferred to those secondary schools as full-fledged secondary school teachers. I think we will be helping to resolve the junior school issue, because junior school is very critical for the CBC. It is where the parents and the teachers engage together with the learner to guide the learner on career pathways. Interns cannot guide children on those pathways. Interns cannot engage with parents. We need experienced teachers teaching learners in junior school, and that needs to happen soon. And we need to quickly plan for grade 9, because grade 9 is just slightly over 6 months away, and we haven't started to plan for it.
All right, thank you very much, Executive Director of the SAR Agenda. Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, for all this conversation, the wise bits that you've given us, even for every stakeholder in the education realm, as well as the government on the scene. We'll take a short break. When we come back, I'll be telling you more on what to expect right here at Morning Cafe.